Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this critical discussion on the nature of peace movements in the Horn of Africa, a conversation that sits at the very heart of Africa Week's broader theme on disrupting distances in global power hierarchies and reimagining agency in Africa's peace, security, and development trajectory. The Horn of Africa remains a region of intense contestation marked by marked by protracted conflicts and fragile peace processes, from Ethiopia and Sudan's stalled transitions to Somalia's enduring instability and South Sudan's uncertain peace. These crises reflect not just local and regional struggles, but also a deeper issue on global dynamics that continue to shape Africa's place in the world. At the core of our discussion today is the role of people-centered agency in addressing these crises. Historically, Africa has been a site of dynamic peace movements, challenging oppression, advocating for justice, and reimagining governance. Yet, despite their rich histories, peace movements in the Horn of Africa struggle to be truly transformative, navigating an environment where civil society is fragmented and the space for independent voices is shrinking. This discussion links directly to the broader Africa Week conversation on power, African agency, and the restructuring of global hierarchies. We're in a period where the state-centric models of peace building that have long dominated international discourse are being abandoned by global actors, leaving space for new models of peace and governance. However, can Africa's peace movement step into this space and lead? This panel is an opportunity to think critically about the future of peace movements, their potential to bridge the gap between states and societies, and their role in reshaping global approaches to peace and governance. To delve into this conversation today, our panelists are made up of ALC fellows and alumni, who will each give us a 10-minute presentation. I will then ask each panelist a question, and then we'll open the floor for questions and answers. So starting our conversation off is going to be Dr. Alagaw Ababu Kifle, who is from Ethiopia. Dr. Alagaw is a research fellow and head of fellowships at the African Leadership Center. Alagaw holds a BA degree in political science and international relations from Addis Ababa University and 2 MA degrees in peace and conflict studies and conflict security and development from Addis Ababa University and King's College London. Alagaw is the 2023 first ever joint PhD graduate of the University of Pretoria, South Africa, and King's College London in leadership and security studies. Alagaw has over 10 years of teaching and research experiences and has widely published both academic and policy-oriented works. His areas of research and publication include leadership and the formation of developmental coalitions, political settlement and peace-building conversations in Africa, international financial institutions, and their engagement on fragile and conflict-affected African states, ad hoc security arrangements in peace building in Africa, and localized conflicts and state building in Africa. Joining us online is Olinda Mabunda, who is going to be speaking on Sudan. She is a peace and security professional with experience in education, customer service, and grant writing. She holds a bachelor's degree in peace studies and conflict resolution from Messiah College, where she gained hands-on experience as the Peace and Conflict Studies Program Assistant and Human Rights Awareness Director. Olinda has also worked as a legal assistant in Mozambique, where she analyzed and led mediation sessions for various conflict cases. She holds a master's degree in global leadership and peacebuilding from King's College London and is currently working with the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue on Sudan. In the room is Geoffrey Duke, who is from South Sudan and is currently a fellow with the African Leadership Center. He is a committed advocate for peace, justice, and human rights in South Sudan and the Horn of Africa. With over a decade of experience, he is renowned for his significant contributions to small arms control, community security, peace negotiations, and humanitarian disarmament. Geoffrey holds a BSc in Politics and International Relations from the University of London, London School of Economics, UK, and an associate degree in Development Studies from Kampala International University. Also joining us online is Ahmed Ibrahim, who is going to speak on Somalia. He is an experienced peacebuilding and policy expert with a strong academic background, holding a BBA, a postgraduate diploma in peacebuilding from Makerere University, and an MSc in global leadership and peacebuilding from King's College London. With over a decade of expertise in peace, security, development, humanitarian nexus, Ahmed has contributed to impactful initiatives with the European Union, United Nations, international NGOs, and research think tanks across the Horn of Africa. He has also served as Northern Ireland civil servant with the United Kingdom Department for Work and Pension. So basically what I'm saying is, as you can see, ALC Fellowships really produces great experts within the peace, security, and development field. And we're very excited to have them here today to have this conversation. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Alagaw to give us the first presentation on Ethiopia.
Thank you, Maggie. It's working, right? Okay, thank you all for coming for this session. Ethiopia has been in a turbulent situation the last 5 years. 3 wars running, 1 ended, and 2 are still ongoing. Because of also economic crisis, natural disasters, and above all also this conflict has generated a very polarized society and polarized narrative. And this has been hugely amplified during the war that started in Tigray, where you have pro-Tigrayan group who are even based in the diaspora mostly. Domestically, they are repressed beyond those who went to the fighting. And then you have also pro-government groups that campaigned on hundreds of Ethiopia, and they push against the global advocacy for the relief of humanitarian issue. So this has been even discussed and debated in the scholarly literature. Some calling the local campaign as a form of resistance against the implementation of the responsibility to protect, where this normative framework push for intervention to save lives and address humanitarian plights. But others see that as a form of decolonial movement where colonial way of knowing and framing is challenged. My interest here is not to engage this debate with the nature of these movements, but my interest is to highlight some domestic voices for peace in the past 5 years and their experience and encounter. These movements have been I wouldn't call them movements, but these instances are observed both at the level of political parties, but also civil societies and influential individuals. Regarding political parties, many political parties, they were more of polarizers than a voice of moderation, but there are a few instances a few parties that consistently push for the peaceful resolution of the conflicts in the country and national dialogue and related measures. One group of political parties in this regard stands out, a group called Abronet. That group, when the war in Tigray started, they publicly expressed a commitment for peaceful resolution of the conflict, and they offered several reasons why this is important. Just to give you a background, when that war broke out, most political parties were aligned either with one party or the other, even when they are opposition. Most of those political parties that were based in Tigray were on the side of the TPLF, and many others were on the side of the federal government. But a few parties stand out, and they call for a peaceful resolution of that crisis. And this particular group stands out in terms of their call for peace. They called for ceasefire and negotiation, and they called for a peaceful resolution of the crisis. And they justified this, arguing that the civil wars of the country in the past, they haven't really brought any benefit, and they wouldn't expect any benefit from this one either. So if nothing's going to come out of it, then a peaceful resolution of that crisis would make sense. They also warned that the war could threaten disintegration and of the country and tearing the social fabric apart. They continued this ways in April 2021. Again, they criticized the arrogance, betrayal, and transparency of the ruling group as a source of Ethiopia's multiple wars, and they mock political forces of the country that were aligned with one or the other party for their way they see the crisis and their underpinning sources. They urge them to change tact and push for. They urge them to be a voice of peace instead of amplifying and escalating the war. They called for immediate commencement of negotiation, dialogue, and then repeatedly, and they called for independent investigation of all atrocity committed in different parts of the country. They urged political parties, elders, activists, influential personality, religious leaders, and the people at large to recognize that no solution would come from the ruling group, and literally they were calling that such solution outside that. They continue to repeat this voice again when the government was driven out of Tigray and when it declared unilateral ceasefire. They appreciate the ceasefire, and they urged both parties to seize that opportunity to enter into dialogue and resolve the conflict. They urged the government to refrain from using the ceasefire as a tool for propaganda and as a means to rebuild its capacity. And they also urged the TPLF to refrain from starting a new war adventure into part of Ethiopia outside Tigray. And they also urge citizens to avoid aligning with one party or the other, rather to focus on the right and dignity of Ethiopians as a whole. Another movement of a peaceful nature was a coalition of civil society. Again, this coalition of civil society on different occasions, they called for a peaceful resolution of the crisis. In September 2021, for example, the coalition of 24 civil society organizations, they called for immediate and unconditional ceasefire. And the reason, again, they justified this in terms of the fact that the root cause of the conflict are not amenable for resolution through war and violence. The situation of civilians is very precarious, and it has to be ended immediately. And then they argue that the war led to backsliding and reversal of many of the gains that were achieved in the past. The conflict is spilling to other parts of the country, and it is a rolling social fabric. So basically, this civil society usually made using events like New Year as an opportunity. They pushed for the peaceful resolution of the conflict, but also they emphasized like the multifaceted nature of the crisis in the country, where they are not simply restricted to one place or the other. They have a broad idea of addressing the war, but also addressing deeper drivers that are not like directly related with war, like repression and all those things. In addition to this, there were also some instances where key personality, again, advocate for peace. One is a musician called Tariku Gankisa. He has a very popular song called Distagina with more than 30 million views. And that was an anthem of unity and an anthem of brotherhood, an anthem of friendship. And then there were a war rally where pro-government forces were were having a demonstration against the TPLF. And then in that movement, he was invited to sing that music, and then he receives a mic, and eventually he says that he's not going to sing. There's nothing to cheerlead, and there's nothing to sing about. He asked the youth to stop sending the youth to war and rather to send elders to mediate and negotiate for peace. And of course, the demonstration did like that. He was threatened, and the next day he apologized for this behavior. This was again one element of this individual's key personality advocating for peace. Another was a case of a patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. His call was, he claimed that his call was being repressed, but eventually a video was smuggled out by a U.S. charity, and in that video, the patriarch indicated that genocide is ongoing in Tigray, and there is an unparalleled suffering, and he called for the end of that. And again, he released that his outreach was being blocked by the government. Again, this constitutes again another attempt of pushing for the end of the crisis from some key individuals. Finally, there were some attempts within the Prosperity Party itself. Two instances, two personality, case of Filsan Abdi and Tahir. And again, another instances for call for peace. Filsan Abdi was ex-Minister of Women, Children and Youth, and she exposed pressure to hide gender-based violence in Tigray, and eventually resigned and began to advocate for peace abroad. Tahir was another state minister of peace. He criticized the prime minister for failing to reach agreement on when negotiation was going with the Oromo Liberation Army. He was eventually arrested, and his family was evicted from government house. But again, this also constitutes another attempt. But in general, there has been some attempts. The perception externally, look at the polarization and the dynamic. You see, there is no local agency and local voice for peace. But in actuality, there have been some call for peace from various sorts of actors. However, these actors deploy different approaches. Some send out very strategic and well thought out message. Others that constitute just an intuitive plea for peace, and they also differ in terms of some were very vocal in their criticism of pro-war actors. Others offer mostly a very blunt statement. So we have a call for peace and advocacy for peace in various shares. So this call for peace, they were not impactful in changing the course of the war or even changing the attitude of the majority of the people. So that constitutes a critical issue because they are not changing the dynamics, even if there were these voices. And there are three factors are important for this failure to have the required impact to change course. One is the polarization was deep. There was a deep ideological polarity in terms of Ethiopians' vision of what the Ethiopian state should have been and how it should be designed, what should look like. There has been very wide divergence, and this divergence was also accompanied by affective hostility. We call it in the literature affective polarization. So there has some sort of hostility that is embedded within this polarization as well. So that gone well below, down to the grassroots level, and that has been one of critical barriers. Another factor is the cultural factor, where compromise is seen as weakness and moderation is seen as surrendering to the demand of the other group. So this again has been another critical barrier for the emergence of a strong peace movement that can influence the behavior factors. Finally, also government repression is also a factor. The government tends to support peace movement when they are aligned with strategic interest, and it repress when they are not interest. So that again constitutes another barrier for the resolution, for the impactfulness of these peace movements. When independent actors call for a peace rally, for example, they were denied and they were repressed. On the other hand, when some actors call for peace that is in line with its interest, and that they were allowed and they were given the spoils or promoted and all those things. So again, government repression has been a factor. So because of these factors, peace voices remained very fringe voice, and they were not effective in changing attitude and changing the behavior of warring actors. This is all I would say. Thank you.
So much, Alagaw, for that presentation. Just to let everyone know, if you have any comments or questions, please just note them down. If you're joining us online, you can write it out in the chat box. Now I'd like to invite Olinda to speak on Sudan's peace process.
Well, thank you very much. So I will be talking about the Sudan crisis. The Sudan crisis is a worst humanitarian crisis of our time, which has led to 28,000, more than 28,000 deaths in Sudan. And at the moment, there are over 13,000 refugees. After the revolution, the 2019 revolution that led to a successful overthrow of Omar al-Bashir, Omar al-Bashir's regime, a failed attempt to a democratic transition led to a civilian-created power, which also left a vacuum and resulted in an armed conflict between the Rapid Support Forces, which is a Sudanese paramilitary group, and also the Sudanese Armed Forces. Well, this civil war in Sudan has caused regional instability in the Horn of Africa, leading to international and regional bodies to analyze and question the nature of peace movements in the Horn of Africa. This region, the Horn of Africa, is marked by socioeconomic diversity, ethnic interconnectedness that has led to border security issues and risk of conflict spillover around the Horn of Africa. During this time of the conflict in October, Takadum emerged as a coalition, democratic civil forces coordination, which was formed by civil society, youth, and democratic forces aimed at forming a new civilian government. Well, the Takadum, through its leadership process, it failed to actually deliver, and then it was divided in February of 2025. The Takadum's aim was essentially to end the war through inclusion. However, they did fail to include the community, which started the 2019 revolution. When the 2019 revolution, the grassroots were involved, which involved youth and women. And as we see the process of Takadum during the 2023 to 2025 lifetime, they did not showcase their ability to include the marginalized community. It was focused with personal interest and also elite interest. Well, with the Takadum attempting to promote dialogue between RSF and SAF, it also had challenges as a peace movement where it did not have correspondence with the SAF, but did have an agreement with RSF. And that agreement did not last because it was not an effective principle or process of peace in the Sudan landscape. When we look at Sudan and also look at the nature of leadership and also the processes that happen in Sudan, one could argue that the leadership of the Takadum, which was included by Hamdok, who was the prime minister of Sudan before the war, was a failure for the process itself, because it did not necessarily have legitimacy and neutrality. They were believed that they sided more with RSF and the SAF, which is the Sudanese army, was against them. In this way, we do want to look at and question also how peace movements are created when creating civilians. We have to also look at mutuality and also effective contribution of grassroots communities with coalitions like the Takadum. Where do they actually find mutuality, and also how do they find common ground in the grassroots level to connect to the main goal, which is peace? And also, when we look at the vision of peace and peace movements, it has been marked by elites in Sudan, mostly being connected with like the international organizations, the international community. However, how do we transfer legitimacy into the peace movements that are on the ground? When looking at peace movements that need a process, there needs to be also a session of influence with the civil society, which is stronger than conflict actors. And this is one of those frameworks that we see that the Takadum used in engaging with the Sudan conflict. It did not necessarily engage with the civil society and the conflict actors in the same momentum, which created mistrust in the process of peace, and also the framework of the process. The Horn of Africa is a complicated mosaic of also of peace, and also how peace is designed due to continuous conflicts. When we look at neighboring conflicts, we look at Sudan itself and the separation that it had with South Sudan. There has not been a time of healing, which creates questions for leadership in the processes that happen in the peace processes that happen in the Horn of Africa. Well, assessing also the agreements, most agreements that were done or signed by the Takadum did not necessarily focus on the bottom-up approach, which usually nurtures sustainable peace movements. So when we look at it, it was looking at more on the point of ending the war and having a democratic government, but not necessarily focusing on the people affected, and also addressing the needs of the people affected, and also the people that have been working towards peace since the 2019 successful revolution. Well, this context does give us questions onto how to sustain peace in this kind of like context where, like the Horn of Africa, currently with the refugees going into the neighboring countries, how to sustain peace, how to include marginalized communities in the neighboring countries that the people of Sudan is. We might be looking at the process of peace movements, and also the failed attempts of processes of peace of Sudan and shape and try to shape it in a way that is inclusive to nomadic communities, but also communities that are actually right now in the that are currently in Sudan and joining together their efforts towards peace. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Olinda. Coming back to the room, I would like to invite Geoffrey to kindly give his presentation on South Sudan.
Thank you, Maggie. Fellow panelists and ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm going to talk about civil society effort in peacemaking in South Sudan, as one of the cases of peace movements in the Horn of Africa. I know many of you are familiar with the history of South Sudan, but just a quick one to tell someone, to give an idea of what country it is to some who may not have that information. So the country I'm talking about is the youngest in Africa, just born in 2011 after a split from Sudan, which was the biggest country in Africa by then. The previous speaker spoke about the split between Sudan and South Sudan. So South Sudan is one of the products of that split. And that followed over 2 decades of liberation struggle between the Southerners and the northern, the central government, basically. Just 2 years after its independence, the country, went into a full-blown civil war, and that was basically a product of a failed leadership, because those who struggled, and fought for all these decades could not manage peace. They ended up in disagreement among themselves now in an independent country with conflicting visions of where the country should go and how power and resources and ideas of the nation should be. So that conversation ended up in violence that broke out in 2013. Following that, there was a peace process initiated by the Intergovernmental Authority on development, which mediated a peace process that resulted into an agreement in 2015. But due to implementation challenges, the country relapsed again into another civil war in 2016. Again, it got re-engaged, and negotiations ensued until another agreement was signed in 2018. Now, the 2018 agreement formed the basis of the current government that is in power today. It's a unity government. Now, things are not moving smoothly, but civil society played a huge role in navigating these tensions and dissent and violence since 2013 up to now. And I'll give you just 2 case studies to illustrate some of their efforts, both on the streets, among communities, and at the table engaging with the elites. and some of the challenges they faced, and of course, the disappointments up to now. I hope I will be able to do that within the remaining 8 minutes or so. Now, I do not know if I even have 8 minutes, but to quickly go to that, let's take South Sudan as a country that I would describe that is not at peace and not at war. I think many of you are familiar with the concept of no war, no peace. So I would put South Sudan in that category. But tensions are really high at different intervals. So there is a real fear that it might actually relapse into a civil war if, concerted efforts do not deliver expected outcomes. Now, how did civil society engage with the civil war? Following the outbreak of the civil wars, civil society, from different groupings, youth groups, women groups, religious leaders, traditional authorities, and different basically sections of the civil population and the civic groups thought of doing something. And when each and everyone rose up to act, they saw a sense of common belonging, because they merged a goal of peace. Now, setting aside civil society as peace crusaders, and that illustrated the need to work together. Now, from the various groupings emerged new forms of organizing so that they could pool their efforts and resources together so that their voices and impact would be stronger. A few of those civil society groups that emerged are Anetaban, Arts Initiative. Anetaban means in Juba Arabic, I am tired. So it's an initiative of artists, musicians, painters, poets, spoken word artists, etc., using art basically to call for peace and an end to hostilities. The second is, the South Sudan Women's Coalition, which is a group of women united with the goal of calling, the parties to end hostilities and enter into dialogue and return the country to peace. Another is the Youth Coalition, which was now youth-focused form of mobilization, also calling for peace. And then an overarching body called the South Sudan Civil Society Forum, emerged out of this now to coordinate at a slightly higher level. Now, the Civil Society Forum is a home to Anataban, to the Women's Coalition, to the Youth Coalition, and etc. When engaging at the collective civil society level. Now that illustrates the different cascades of organizing, united by the mutual goal of calling for peace. Now, what did these different groups do? At the streets and grassroots level, they organized public rallies. The women organized marches, including the famous silent march. They put duct tapes on their mouth and manila papers with their messages for peace, and denouncing rape and sexual violence in conflict. One of the most powerful marches, actually, just without talking, they managed to piss off the security forces by saying absolutely nothing. That is one example. The other is, of course, the artists making anti-war music, We see graffitis and murals calling for peace and denouncing war. We've put billboards calling for peace, and through the radios, we've seen civil society reach out to the masses, urging them to stay away from violence. Now, besides the activities on the streets and among communities, these various groups are also engaging with the elite at the high level. They engage with the mediation, calling for a seat at the table, a negotiation table, where the warring parties are talking. Initially, it was tough, but they continued to push and calling for that space as a united body of several civil society groups added the weight, and finally the mediation listened to them and gave them a spot at the negotiation table. And they were strategic in demanding that space. They say we are one, but we have different segments among ourselves. We have the youth, we have the women, we have persons with disabilities, and then we also have experts on security, we have experts on gender issues, we have experts on constitutional affairs, and we have lawyers. So coming as a union, but also illustrating your diversity can be useful, and that really helped the civil society when they were negotiating for a table at the negotiation table. Negotiating for a seat at the negotiation table. At the table, what were they doing? Basically, civil society engaged with all the warring parties, coming in as a neutral body that is standing with the people. Now, of course, it's difficult to be neutral, but at least they managed to maintain a meaningful level of impartiality that can be demonstrated by their ability to shuttle the different warring parties and the mediation, engaging them in the peacemaking process. What came out of the engagement, I forgot to mention that they also, besides lobbying the different warring parties and engaging the mediation, offering suggestions on how the peace process should go, they provided practical suggestions on what the future peace agreement should look like including real language of protocols and provisions. And I would highlight one of the main contributions from civil society was in the area of security sector reform. That contribution is one of the most appreciated even by the mediation, because they introduce a whole chapter on security sector reform, which is detailed and if implemented could have changed a lot. However, of course, implementation comes with its own challenges, and that is where I'm actually going to conclude the real challenges of implementation. Beyond crafting a beautiful peace agreement lies the real challenges of implementation, and civil society did not do really much on that because they didn't have adequate devices to influence that stage of the peace process. At the table, yes. On the streets, yes, they were making noise. They offered proposals that were taken on, and we could see our handwritings on the peace agreement. But now when it came to implementation, it was money, power, and an influence whose interest is at play. Now, while the mechanism established for implementation of the peace agreement contained some representatives of civil society, there wasn't much power to influence these mechanisms. So, for example, we have civil society representatives in the Constitution Review Commission. However, they're just members, just commissioners like other commissioners. They cannot move the process. The process moves only when adequate resources is put to it. But one major challenge to peacemaking in South Sudan is the lack of funding. Yes, some may say that is ridiculous. South Sudan is one of the richest countries in Africa. It's oil, it's floating on oil. How can it have no funding for implementing peace? Yes, that is what the government has been singing for the past several years, that there is no funding, and civil society cannot really do much about that. That is one of the illustrations of the limits of civil society influence when it comes to the implementation stage. And then the other is, you probably heard this several times in other contexts as well, political will, the lack of political will. Civil society have been asking, what is political will and where can we find it in South Sudan? Because we see everyone complaining about it, that this agreement is not being implemented because of lack of political will. The government is complaining, the opposition is complaining, the foreign embassies are complaining, civil society are complaining, the media are complaining, people, the communities are also complaining that we had this thing, political will, that is lacking. That's why peace is not being implemented. So the two challenges, lack of resources and lack of political will, I would leave you with that to really think what happens beyond influencing a peace process and coming up with a good document. My time is up, so I will leave the rest for
Thank you.
Questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey, for such a rich contribution. May I now invite Ahmed to give us his presentation on Somalia.
Thank you.
Ahmed?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, the rest of the team. And thank you for our guests and scholars for coming us. My contribution in this discussion will focus on the unacknowledged role of Somali women in peace building. Basically, this topic has come in my mind like some months ago when I listened to a lecture by our former president, Mohammed Siad Barre, and he acknowledged the role of the Somali women in our society and compared it to the men, they are more productive. So at that time, the government has empowered and created a system and programs that give them priority because of their competence. But since the state collapsed and because of our traditional, our women are greatly excluded in the roles of decision making. So in this presentation and this discussion, we will focus on that unrecognized role of the Somali women in peace building, particularly in an atmosphere of political instability and daily prolonged clan conflicts and civil war that has existed in the last 30 years in Somalia. So basically, the Somali society is organized in clans and sub-clans. And basically, women are not considered a full member of the clan because they might pawn from this clan, but married to another clan, or might pawn from sub-clan of the same clan, but married to another sub-clan of the same clan. Because of that, and the structure of the society, which is basically, based on that clans, a woman cannot be owned by one single clan. So because of that abandonment, that kind of losing their clan membership because of intermarriage of other clans, they are not belonging to one clan, and they might lose certain positions. And there are other factors which we will discuss in this presentation, in this discussion. And basically, that's where the victimization, started. So if we look the role and the contribution of the Somali women in peace building, we will take them into two. Basically, the traditional structure, traditional mechanisms of peace building, and the modern state-based contributions that women play. So basically, if I start with traditional mechanisms that our women have used it, and they have been used it, we will differentiate if they were used it, or if they become an instrument for peace building by other actors using them, or if themselves decided to be a role taker, just an actor of the peace building. For example, if we start now, role number one, the dia, like basically what happened is our conflicts, commonly happen in overgrazing. It's common for murder case to occur due to conflicts between clans over resources such as grazing land, or as a form of a revenge from a previous matter that had happened upon a time. So in such situations, clan leaders and religion leaders typically come together to negotiate a settlement, and this often involves the payment of dia, compensation, to the family of the deceased person. So basically, dia is like, I think it's Arabic word, but it comes through Islam, and so it's commonly used in mainly Muslim countries. So it could be like a blood money or compensation, a monetary compensation paid to the family or heirs of a person who have been killed or injured due to intentional or unintentional harm. So, and the concept is all about restorative justice. It's aiming to offer some kind of financial remedy, in the case of a wrongful death or injury to someone. So basically, that dia, women had a role of giving, like this amazing, like giving their own selves to create peace. Like that's selfless. That's like the highest degree of, but it's still unacknowledged. Like the way the thing happens is like the dia usually consists of two. So payments of 100 camels or equivalent value in other forms. Like if the camel is not available at that moment, so people may agree to make like paying, say, 50 camels for the 100 camel, 50 camels, living camels, and 50, something equivalent to 50 camels, or maybe 30 camels, and like in terms of the agreement. So the second usually, the second method we usually use to solve our conflicts is like a marriage arrangement, where a young, I could say like, say 18 or more even, a virgin girl, never married before, often a relative, such as a sister or cousin of the perpetrator, is married to the family of the deceased person. So like to create a family bond between the two conflicting families. Like someone has killed someone, and then the perpetrator's sister will be married by the brother of the deceased, the victim. Or if there's no brother, maybe relative like uncle or even the father. So that after time, like there will be a bound relationship that has been created by that arranged marriage, and the conflict may end there, because there will be no revenge in the coming generations, because there's a children between the two families, and the main reason, the main key player in this peace building is that woman. So the question is the woman forced to accept this marriage arrangement, or it's just by her choice? And you can understand the risk that involves, to be married by the family that are in conflict with your own family, and that already your brother has killed, a son of that family. It's kind of risk taking, but basically it happens still, and it's part of the culture. And I will not say it's forced marriage because of some sisters sacrifice, and if the family requests, a couple of times, they sacrifice just to get a peace, and the family, her brother will not be enough to be nafs. Her brother will not be killed because of the marriage he did, and the family will accept it to take compensation of, like, say, 100 camel a deer. So that's what that's the main the main motive is just to stop the conflict to continue, and that's where our women create a role of reconciling a conflicting issue. The other thing, which is the second point, that our women play is qaran. Qaran is a Somali word basically, so it's not from outside, whether from Arabic or other foreign language, but basically Somali woman was always a backbone for the financing peace and security. It started during the colonial period, where Somali women had to sell their jewelry to support freedom fighters. In the most recent record, the Somali women in Minnesota have raised over $2 million to support the counterterrorism group operations. There's a war going on in Puntland now between Puntland security forces and ISIS, Islamic State in Iraq, in Syria and Iraq. Unfortunately, 70%, over 80% of the people, the manpower of the terrorist group were foreigners and well equipped, having drones and other sophisticated weapons that we never seen, or according to some sources, supported by other foreign governments. So the people organized themselves, raised funds across the world and within the country to liberate the country, which successfully has been done. Like it's in this third phase now, which is to clear out and eradicate, if there is any living terrorist group, terrorist members across the country. So the Somali women in Minnesota have raised over $2 million to support the counterterrorism operations in Puntland and supported the Puntland police force and other locations. The similar fundraising, Qaran, has taken place in Nairobi with nearly 500,000, in Europe and other places in the world. So basically, they don't provide only funds, cash. The Somali woman has also provided dry food, and some of them who had medical training have returned home and sacrificed it to provide a medical support, like providing nursing, providing nursing support in the hospitals, or working in the hospitals, military hospitals, to support soldiers that has been injured in the front line. Another role women played, which was a traditional, I could say, because it existed from generation to generation, and it's an outlet, is advocacy and mediation among the clan members. In the major places or major cities where all clan members are equally raised, or sub-clans that belong to one clan had a conflict, and they live in that area together. In such time, men cannot make free movements at all, cannot go to work, cannot move from one village to another village, or cannot move from one big town, in certain area of that town to another town. Like, say, when Mogadishu was in a bloody civil war, and there were a clan green lines, between the clans. So it was the only woman that had the opportunity to make a movement among the clans, because men will be killed for revenge, and women are the only one that was able to make a business. So they were facilitating business transactions to make bread on the table for the family, and not only, but to create a peace and mediation among the fighting clan members. They were the envy of the peace. So one of the things that they commonly use traditionally is wearing, dressing a white clothes and moving between the fighting clan men, tribal men, so that they stop the war. Or pressuring the decision makers, elders, that they must make a peace. Otherwise, for instance, we'll remove our clothes, you know. So otherwise, you have to stop, you know, the conflict. So in some places, like the other things that they had is like Somali women are the mothers, sisters, and you know, relatives and wives of the men who are deciding this war to be ended, and they have a role to play as well, and pressure their husbands, pressure their you know, brothers or their sons to not decide a war but a peace. Like, for instance, if two clans are in conflict over a person that has been killed, but one relative wants the other person to be also sentenced capital punishment, like to be killed, but still it's the woman, you know, which is a brother, sister, or maybe a mother, or maybe a wife, for that man who his son has been killed, yeah, to force him just to let, you know, the criminal, you know, be you know, a compensation to be paid rather than capital punishment sentence. So despite that role of peace building in different angles, like from that traditional to the systematic modern way, which is, you know, the Somali women had different non-governmental organizations, such as We Are Women Association, a well-known organization. Other organizations, Nagad, you know, non-governmental sector, or holding a government position, though it's limited. We will discuss in the coming, you know, paragraphs. So basically, like being a member of parliament, they are still contributing to the peace and stability of the country, but it's quite limited. So why they are not so strong in the decision-making table while they are still active? So that's what we need to identify. So basically, the main reason that challenged Somali women, posed a challenge to Somali women, is the clan system. You know, I could say a cursed 4.5 clan system. The 4.5 clan power sharing system in Somalia is a political arrangement designed to allocate a political representation and resource among the major clans in the country. It was introduced in an attempt to provide a more inclusive governance framework, especially following the collapse of the central government in 1991 and ensuring civil war that caused significant clan-based conflict. So the structure of the 4.5 power clan sharing system is based on the recognition of the Somali's major clans, you know, and their proportional representation in the government. Unfortunately, you know, basically you will wonder when you hear like major clans. I could say like there is, according to the census, like that has been collection, a clans that has been added to the minor clans are majority in number, but because of they are not armed, then they become a minor. Like you know, the like say the Jarer or the Bantu society, you know, they are big number, but because of they are not armed, they have been added to the like 0.5. So it was like when this system was established in 2000, the 4.5 system in Djibouti, it was because of like the factional leaders, warlords were invited in Djibouti, and the international community were like disappointed the civil society's role because it was extremely limited. Like when they want a good thing, they cannot implement because the factional leaders are armed and they you know, and they can oppose. So at that moment, leaders, you know, clans of the army leaders has been considered as majority, and
Thank you.
unarmed clans has been, so that was the main reason. So, and because of that 4.5 system, women do not belong a clan, then they will not be able to get a position because of they are not, it's already a clan system and you're not from one clan. So I will
Thank you so much, Ahmed.
yeah. I will summarize.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically, women's effort to peace remain unrecognized in formal government. Why? Because of patriarchal social structure, because of exclusion from decision making, and because of gender stereotype and cultural norms that they cannot decide well for the people, but still they are doing. Security concerns and access to the political, insufficient support for the women's political empowerment, and generally the fragmentation of the Somali people. So
Ahmed.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We just want to get into the questions, and I feel like if, when we get questions, then maybe you can continue to give your contributions answering to the questions. Thank you so much. All right, so I think we can start to see some themes come up in every presentation that has been given. We can definitely see calls for peace emerging from different members of society. All our panelists have spoken about youth groups, have spoken about women groups, have spoken about coalitions as well, forming and collaborating in unified voice, calling for peace. We've also heard about calls for peace in different ways, right? We've heard about people making music. We've heard about anthems. We've heard about silent marches. We've heard about women wearing white. So there's definitely been different ways as well to approach this call for peace. Unfortunately, we've also heard about the challenges. We've heard about how, as much as these peace movements have managed to emerge, they have somehow faced several challenges, several barriers, several limitations in having them have a transformative moment and really change the trajectory of the societies in the Horn of Africa. So at this point, I would like to open the floor for any questions. I see that we are running out of time, but I will take a few questions for the panelists. If anyone has any questions. Yeah. Okay, we have a question from Alexa. Do you want to read it out?
Okay. Alexa said, thank you very much for your presentations, Geoffrey. Other than that of Anataban, where in South Sudan do you see informal leadership, collective action brewing, and what exactly do you know of their strategies to oppose the current system? That's question one. Question two is, in your opinion, what does the failed Tumaini process in Nairobi mean for the country? And for Alagaw, what measures could improve cohesion and effectiveness of regional initiatives such as AU, EAC, IGAD at the Horn of Africa addressing conflict and peace?
Thank you. Whether you call it IGAD, EC, or AU, ultimately they are intergovernmental organizations. So if there is no political will at the national level, then it's not going to come when they become IGAD or when they become EAC or when they become part of AU. So that is the real challenge. And as I see it, more than the question, what is important is whether the leadership at the national level have any interest to pursue peace, even when that undermines the specific interests of that ruling elite. So this is what I would say. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex, for your questions. Besides the several civil society groups that I mentioned, there are several other movements out there, especially at the subnational level, doing local peace works, which is very, very important because as you may remember, even when the permanent ceasefire agreement was signed, it only ended formal fighting between and among the warring parties. It did not really stop intercommunal violence or local conflicts. So various reports even indicated that the leading killer in South Sudan over the past few years has been intercommunal violence. And there are several groups are doing really good work at the grassroots, trying to address those immense challenges. Now, when it comes to confronting the system at the center, it is a totally different ball game. I'm not in a position to mention formations that are, planning to challenge the system, because if I do, that would work to their disadvantage, because someone will come for them, maybe. But what I would like to perhaps stress is that civil society continue to engage with both citizens and the parties to the agreement, and also friends of South Sudan looking for a way out to really build durable peace in South Sudan. The engagement in the Tumaini Initiative is one of the ways in which we're looking for sustainable solutions. Now that brings me to the second question, like what does the failure of the Tumaini process mean for the country? I wouldn't really say that the Tumaini process failed. I would stick with the formal statement that came out from the chief mediator of the peace process, in which he stated that the government requested for the peace talks to be adjourned, and that he allowed it. So to call it a failed process might be inappropriate at this point, unless it's formally said that the process has ended. But we perhaps to finalize the implication of that process ending up without a final agreement is that these groups, opposition groups who have been engaging with the government through the Tumaini Initiative, if there is no alternative dialogue space, there is a real risk that some of them will resort to violence, and it's not. It won't be surprising, because that has been the way of conversation, that we've seen in South Sudan over the several past years. So, should we put our effort to make sure that the Tumaini process succeeds? Yes, because the risk of its, the outcome of its collapse is violence, unless, of course, there is serious and alternative dialogue space that continues to foster the conversation that was going on at the Tumaini Initiative. Thank you.
That Geoffrey and Alagaw. I actually have questions for our panelists online. Olinda, you spoke about how Takadum did not include marginalized communities and was largely focused on elite interests. So what lessons from that experience do you think future peace movements can learn? And for Ahmed, today is actually the eve of International Women's Day, so I think your contributions were quite timely. And therefore, I'd like to ask you, because you've spoken about how Somali women are very integral in mobilizing resources for the community during war times, and I'm sure during peace times as well. So what do you think can be done to make sure that their contributions are better recognized within society and that they can take on more of the decision-making roles that they really deserve?
Well, thank you. Well, the lessons that can be learned for future peace movements, especially in contexts like Sudan, it's to understand the conflicted mosaic of peace in contexts such as Sudan, where it is apparently hard. It is actually hard for the civil society to be impartial in that space. However, there has to be better approaches for recognizing where the power is within the people. For example, at the moment, the tribal communities hold power at the moment. And also there have been different women in different regions of Sudan, but also and youth who have who continue working towards peace for Sudan. How can we strategically as peace builders include everyone in a way that it's a continuation, not necessarily a goal to that we're going to get to, but like, okay, it's a process that we're having. So for the next to nurture a sustainable peace in this in peace movements in the Horn of Africa, operations should be determined by the grassroots of peace initiatives, while also moving towards policy changes in national and regional levels also. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Basically, first of all, congratulations and happy Women's Day. Basically, the Somali women have played a significant role in contributing to the stability of the country and of the society at a grassroots level. So to ensure women's contribution are recognized and integrated to the formal process is essential at this stage, today's stage of peace building in Somalia. So to strengthen a legal framework for gender inclusion, we have to legalize the framework and give them space so that we ensure their participation in formal decision making. And secondly, we can do encouraging active female political participation and also recognition for traditional way. We can raise changing cultural norms through awareness, informing the people their role. And also, you know, like nowadays, when you see the traditional elders and other sectors of the society, they are recognizing the role of the woman. And in that recognition, we could increase and, you know, do a lot of more awareness to recognize their informal peace building roles. And in a state level, you know, in the formal way, gender sensitive peace and security policies could be developed. And also here at LC, African Leadership Center, as a research think tank, it's necessarily important to raise, like, the things I didn't get chance previously is like the quota of the woman in the government was increasing in the recent history in some parts, while declining in the other parts. For instance, according to the current constitution, they're supposed to get 30% of the parliament seat, but they have now 19.7 maximum. Like in Puntland, there's only one woman in the parliament seat out of 66, just only one. So, like through awareness and recognizing their role, we could make a change. Other things that could help is education and empowerment programs that's specifically given to the women, particularly the young women and the girls as well. So there's a progress in one way because we recognize, and there's just a gap, shortage in the other way, pitfalls, and that can be fixed upon the time. And I thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. Okay, we have some questions in the room. This is the last round of questions. I'm very cognizant of time, but please go ahead.
It's to my, I was gonna ask Ahmed, because you just mentioned the way that women can be also included into decision making, but more of the intervention areas that you were mentioning were all about how women can, what was providing trainings to women and stuff like that. But what is the government doing itself and the civil societies and all these people to include women in decision making? Not just what are women doing, but what is the other side doing? Because I feel like for so many years, women are just contributing and their contribution is still not considered or appreciated. So what can the government do, not the women? But yeah, thank you.
Should I wait or should I? Okay. So my question is for Geoffrey, and I really like the example of the Women's Peace Coalition because of my own research. So I wanted to ask you, is this an example of women's leadership within a peace movement? You know, how have they been received by society at large? Have they been able to establish mutuality? Do they have power and influence? And I'll abuse the fact that I have the microphone. I'm also going to ask Alagaw a question. Alagaw, thank you also for your presentation. And, you know, whenever there's a conflict without hesitation, the international community tends to get involved in one way or another. And I'm thinking specifically of the Nobel Peace Prize that was given to the president of Ethiopia. So I wanted to ask you, you know, is it helpful, harmful, or irrelevant for the international community to intervene or to meddle in any way? What would a constructive role for the international community be in these conflicts if they should be involved at all? Thank you.
Thank you. The role of international committee is a point of much debate. Even with the Nobel Prize, there have been points being made that it has incentivized the regime to wage war, to start war in northern Ethiopia because it boosted its legitimacy and it was not expected. Like if a war happened, it's not because of the action of a person who is a recipient of Nobel Prize. It must be the responsibility of somebody. The rogue actor must have been something other than the government. And I think the initial perception of the international perception of the war when it broke out in Tigray, for example, it appears to be aligned with that, but eventually there's also the recognition of the role of government in the process. So it's really a complex situation. But generally, I would say if it is informed by appropriate conflict analysis and if it is sensitive to contextual changes and developments, and if it has set up to that level of strategic foresight, it's going to have a positive effect. The agreement that was signed in 2022, the role of external actors is important there in terms of sanctioning and those things that incentivize the regime to negotiate an agreement even when it has the power. The military balance was essentially shifting towards the regime. So one of the constraints that incentivized to sign the agreement, even when the military balance is in its favor, is fear of these sanctions and the effect of that on the economy. So yeah, external actors will also have this complex role and sometimes contradictory. and there will be room, and I think it can be made more cohesive and more unified if there is a will. But again, given the prevailing geopolitical circumstances, we may not expect such a united and common agenda toward this sort of state. So probably things will continue in such a messed up way. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Basically, the question was, if I remind you, the role of the Somali government in ensuring empowering the woman, at the other side. So basically, the Somali government contains both men and women as a society. It's the government. And the quota system itself, which was a policy that has been adopted in the constitutional draft, the one that we have now, was empowering women contribution, women's role in decision-making of the country. And, also, the legislatives that has been passed, legislations like GBV, gender-based violence legislations, bills, and, other acts that has been proposed by the Ministry of Justice, which includes ensuring the women's participation in prosecutors, Attorney General Office and prosecutors, which requires like the deputy to be some deputies to be appointed as female, so that they are also part of justice framework. So all of that efforts has been made by the government, but we cannot deny there's a shortfall. Like, for instance, recently the Ministry of Family Affairs has been appointed a former general, retired general, which is still holding as a minister in that position, and he went to New York to attend a women conference in New York, and to raise attention in social media, Twitter and Facebook, and Blue Sky, all of the social media in Somalia, particularly, claiming that at least we are not letting our women to attend a women conference across the globe, and that's very unfortunate. So yes, I agree, we need to lift up, but we are better than some years ago. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Gloriana. The Women Coalition represented an emergence of leaders in context of a civil war. What they did clearly showed what they rose up for. That is a clear illustration, in my view, of leadership emergence. Now, we work together to influence the peace process, and they secured some representation of women in the peace implementation mechanisms, Constitution-making Commission, the Security Defense Review Board, the Commission for Truth and Healing, and several others. They are even in the overall monitoring mechanism of the peace agreement. Now, one thing that worked into their success, in my view, is the non-hierarchical structure, in which it's not like one woman sitting on top of there as Madam President and then the rest under. No, they organize in a non-hierarchical way, and even the slots that are available for them in these mechanisms, they looked around the women who had the relevant expertise to bring them in these mechanisms. Now, the power they have, of course, one is the expert power, because they brought women with expertise to the implementation mechanisms. They do have an amazing convening power, by the way. they were able to bring politicians from, all the political parties, including the ones who were fighting, and they had a huge conference addressing, challenges to the peace process and how it should be addressed from a women's perspective. Of course, people expect women to talk about women issues when they gather, but it was proper, national political issues and how we can transition from war to peace. I did not see any men group convening such a very high level, conference, which included even the wife of the deputy president. Now, that form of organizing, for me, represents power and access to the cycles of power. So I would say they still have, potential to influence decision and that could be leveraged. But perhaps one challenge is the tensions that they have with other women who look at these women who are organizing at the top as taking away their, their seats, which in actual sense is not taking their seats. They came with their seats. They just saw opportunity to engage, and then they came with their seats, and they're organizing. So to the rest, it's like there were supposed to be women here. You took it all. That is causing infight among women across different women groups. And then, of course, the other is what the rest of the civil society also experienced, which is civic space, suffocation through, censorship, arbitrary arrest and detention, unconstitutional demands for clearances, and etc. And then finally, it is the reliance on external funding that is really a major issue that affects not only the Women Coalition, but the entire civil society fraternity. Perhaps the recent cuts in donor funding by way of US aid would give us, an opportunity to reimagine sustainability of organizing and civil society work at the grassroots level for socio-economic change. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Geoffrey. So once again, very cognizant of time, I think we can do our final remarks now. I will invite our panelists online. Olinda, if you don't mind going first, and then Ahmed will go after you.
Well, thank you very much for the much needed conversation on peace movements and the Horn of Africa. It is important to note that the Horn of Africa as a region, but also Sudan as a country has had has demonstrated a successful nature of peace movements. However, also as a region, the Horn of Africa has had challenges such as natural resource challenges, which has created regional alliances which contribute more to the nature or to the nature of peace movements in the region. So also issues such as like the Nile River, which has created conflicts, regional conflicts. The Alpha Shaga dispute, which is a continuing conflict that continues to disrupt the nature of peace movements in both Sudan and Ethiopia. We have to also redesign and rethink and have the ability as peace and security aspects to understand how to move forward with the process of peace and also continue on merging all the peace actors involved. So we create a context of peace for regions that are historically with ethnic interconnectedness, border dynamics, and also religious complexities such as the Horn of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. But please, let's keep it short and punchy. Thank you. Ahmed, you're muted.
I think it's okay now. Thank you all for this engaging and insightful conversation, and thank you for coming, some guests to us. It has been a pleasure to share perspectives and learn from each other. I hope our discussion today sparks further dialogue and actions in supporting the empowerment of Somali women and fostering lasting peace, because of when we create an inclusive system of decision-making, then we create peace, social cohesion. And I look forward to continuing this improvement work together. Thank you again, my fellow panelists, and to everyone who joined us today. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Ahmed. Geoffrey?
Thank you. I would conclude by saying that much as civil society can organize and influence and the outcome of a peace agreement, there is a lot more that needs to be done at the implementation stages that often they do not prepare for during the peace process, as highlighted by the current challenges faced in South Sudan. But one particular point that I would like to emphasize is how can civil society's work be sustainable, and when there is need, they are able to intervene, not only intervention when there is donor funding. In this age where investments are moving towards military defense in Europe, and global politics is experiencing real change, and we're going to see more and more changes in funding structures. So I would like to invite all of us to think about organizing in a sustainable fashion, and that is not only for South Sudanese civil society, but global movements for peace and social change. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to highlight one particular issue that came out when I listened also the case from South Sudan and Sudan as well. The tendency of this peace movement is of being an NGO type. When we say them, even civil society, they are not really civil society in the sense where they are independent of external funding and influence. So that probably explains why they are not also having the impact they are supposed to have. When I look at the voice of the civil societies when they're called for peace, and when I look at political party, you see difference in terms of narrative. The civil society is is highly aligned with the international discourse on how we should approach this issue. So it has some performative aspect. I wondered, like, are this civil society simply performing the way civil society should we act, or is this something that is deeply driven? Whereas when I look at political party, you see some difference in terms of focusing on the power issue and the cause of the problem being the system itself, the regime itself, and their audience also tends to be mostly local actors who are pushing for war, local actors who are pushing for polarization. And when I look at this, so how can a question probably was pondering is how can civil society will be embedded in society more than being connected up to funding agency, and that would be important for increasing the agency of these non-state actors for peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alagaw. I think that's a wonderful point to stop on. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined us in the room. Thank you to everyone who has joined online. Thank you for engaging. And I wish you all a good evening and happy International Women's Day for tomorrow.